Do you think that overall mantra, what's in the ether of society, at least in this country in general, and sports in particular, and we'll use even golf, that the idea that you have to continually train and train and train to get better and better and better all the time without taking breaks has caused part of this?
Yeah, I think there's part of that, and I think that's psychological, usually more than physiologic, right? I mean, guys feel like they can't take it off. But I think part of when you work with a high level player, the one thing like here in New Jersey, the good part was, well, guess what? We're gonna have an off season. The winter's gonna come and there's gonna be no golf, right? So we had it. Well, we were fortunate in certain ways that we actually had breaks. And one of the interesting things, I ran this juniors academy for 10 years. We put like 40 kids into D1 who could only play golf 7 months a year. And people are like, how are you bumping them out? I'm like, because the no golf got them to focus on their physical and got them away from the repetitive stress of golf. And I think they actually improved much faster. Where people in Florida feel like they have to be out hitting balls every single day.
Hmm.
And then fitness is always secondary, right? It's never primary. So for us, we had a 4 or 5 month window where golf was secondary and fitness was primary. And so the body healed, we got stronger, we got faster, we got more stable, all of the good stuff, right, that we can get out of training. So I think there was actually a huge advantage of it. And, I think with tour players and people who live in warm weather clients, you got to almost still think about it like I'm in season and I'm out of season. Or you can call it preseason, in season, out of season, like whatever, right? I mean, we can get into all the nuance of that. But generally speaking, just finding a way for you to look at it, even though you're able to go to golf, you say, hey, look, I'm going to bring my golf volume way down. I'm actually going to take certain weeks where I'm not going to play at all. I'm going to bring my volume down, and I'm going to take my training volume and move it way up. And then when I come back, I'm going to be way better than I was. And you will, if done right, obviously.
Do you think that some of the susceptibility to injury, in particular at the higher levels, let's say Division 1 and up, to the best
Mm-hmm.
players in the world, with the advent of lighter shafts, longer clubs, we already identified that continual training and not time off is playing a major role in that. But the quest for more speed, putting the body into greater and greater demands, as we mentioned, torque on the spine and the joints during a swing that's 120 plus miles an hour. Now some of those guys approaching 130 on a regular basis.
Yep.
What role do you think that plays in the beating up, we'll say, of the body and the going down that road to injury?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously the reality of speed in today's game is the reality of it, right? Like we can't deny that hitting it far is kind of critical at this point if you want to have success at the highest level. You can't swing at you can't have 170 ball speed anymore. Like, I think the number now we'd say 180, but I think we're quickly approaching 185 as kind of like hey, that's not necessarily crazy fast, but like that's kind of the baseline, 182, 183. Like we're creeping above 180 even now. So I think it's important. I think to do it and do it properly is a big, again, back to the recipe analogy. Finding the right recipe is really important to that, right? I can't do everything I've always done and just add this super high intensity thing, which creates more intensity and more volume of work. It can't be an add-on. So if I'm going to add something needs to come away, because obviously max velocity swinging is pretty high in intensity, right? And we know that as intensity go up, frequency and volume need to go down.
Yes.
Right? The body can only handle so much work, right? So now I'm adding in this high intensity thing. So what am I going to take away? Right? What am I going to lift less weights? Am I going to play less? Am I going to hit less balls? Like, how am I bringing my total work volume? And when I say volume, it doesn't have to just be in the gym. That volume includes practice time. That means playing time. That means all of the physical stresses that you have, right? How do you bring that total, we call it the volume, is looking at like frequency, duration, time, load, right? Like we can say, oh, I did 10 sets of this amount of weight, so how much work is that? I did it this many days a week, right? And so you have this kind of volume of work that you look at, let's call it, and you can look at it from a daily value, a weekly value, a monthly value, whatever it is. So most of us who are trying to do it on a high level, we're trying to be somewhere around the point where, we're on the line, we're under the line, but we're trying to get as much good work in as we can without going over the line. So as soon as I throw that in, I now got to give up something else, right? You know, one thing you learn about golf guys is they don't like to give up golf.
That's for sure.
Right? So now you're like, okay, well, now I got to take something out of my gym program. Well, if I don't have proper stability, I don't have proper strength or whatever, high velocity work can hurt me. And I think that's one of the problems where we are seeing people get hurt is A, they're not adjusting the volume properly when they add it in. And B, on the other end, when you're looking at guys who sit behind a desk for 30 years and young kids, I think most of them are starting their speed training way too soon. Their bodies are not actually prepared to swing that hard, that fast. You know, whether it's the older guys who don't have enough range of motion and whipping their body around at high velocity is going to do bad things. Or young kids who, you know, they can find ways to create speed, but don't actually have the strength and stability. They might have the range of motion, but they don't have the stability and the motor control, the segmental controls of the spine and pelvis and all that stuff to actually do it safely as well, right? I mean, the amount of lumbar and spinal, like hairline fractures we're seeing with young golfers today is off the charts.
Wow.
And I think a lot of that is stemming from some of this high velocity work. And we got to separate, hey, this is how you play great from, are you ready for this type of training? Not just do it because that's what you do, right? I mean, some people may need, like we had kids in our junior program, like, you know, we had kids who were 18 years old who were doing speed work. And we had kids who were 12 and we're like, look, you may not get to doing speed work until you're 14 or 15 years old. Mm-hmm. We might let you run some sprints and do some other type of stuff, which I think is lower risk for them. Run some sprints, maybe do a little bit of plyos or something like that. Even throwing a med ball, because you can't move it so fast, can potentially, for certain people, be much lower intensity.
Is that where you get into the difference between chronological age, biological age, and sporting age?
Yeah, I mean, right. So you can have there are 13-year-olds who are like 18-year-old, and you know, some of them have, you know, did gymnastics as kids or other sports that develop some good muscular strength, stability, coordination, and stuff like that. So that kid maybe who grew up doing some gymnastics might be way prepared way sooner, especially if he's got some parents who are bigger. He's an early bloomer. She's an early bloomer, whatever the case may be. That kid might be ready at 13 or 14. And obviously the girls it's going to be sooner because they mature sooner.
Right.
But on the other side, you get some of these kids who come in, they're 13, they look like they're 9. And, you know, and all their friends who's the same age, who might look like he's 13 or 14, he's doing speed work, and his mom and dad, you know, go to the golf course on, you know, to the AJGA on the weekend or whatever, the New Jersey State Golf Tournament. And, you know, Jimmy's hitting at 50 by their kid and Jimmy's doing speed work. And they're like, oh, well, Johnny needs to be doing speed work too. And it's like, well, Johnny's going to snap in half if we do speed. You know, I hear you.
But
we actually have to
take your time. There.
We got to actually get ready to do that. And that doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. So like this desire for speed, I think, is a good thing. But again, the recipe, the volumes, the intensity, the frequencies, all of these things need to really specifically be addressed as opposed to just throwing them in your program. Oh, I bought super speed or stack or whatever. Okay, great. Well, what else do you do? How much are you practicing? You know, and some of these, especially the youth kids, some of these kids are also playing basketball and soccer and like doing 5 other things because we all know it's good to do multi-sport.
Right.
Where do we stop and say, okay, time out. We're doing too much. Right. And, or, you know, hey, if you want to start adding more gym and speed work for golf, maybe we need to give up soccer. Right. Or maybe instead of playing on, you know, you love soccer, cool. Maybe you play on the town league for fun and you practice twice a week and have 1 game a week versus on the club select team that you're practicing every single night and playing tournaments with 6 games on the weekend. Okay, you love soccer. You know, we believe that the multi-sport has value to you, but you don't have to play everything on the, you know, super high overcommitment level, right? Go surfing is really good for you, man. Like, I mean, there's plenty of things. Go ride a skateboard, right? I mean, there's plenty of cool things you can do. You don't have to pay for a uniform. You don't have to have a coach to be developing biomotor skills.